Hello, welcome back to the Coleman channel. This is part 2 of a 2-part episode of my Behind the Process series. This is Behind the Process of Places to Be in the Mindscape, a book what I done wrote. You might want to watch part 1 if you've not watched part 2 already. This is me editing the episode right now. Basically divvied it up into 2 episodes because if I made it one long episode it would be way too long. So this is the second part, me talking about the making of the stories and the poems contained within the book. Part 1 is the origins of the anthology collection and the creation of the title and the cover art and all that kind of stuff. So watch part 1 first before you watch part 2. If you watched part 1 already or you simply don't care, this is part 2. Enjoy. Of course, I would have to bring this up. I dedicated this book to my papa, or my grandfather, who you might call, who passed away a little, probably like, I can't remember now, like, it was a whole, it's obviously a very sad thing. It's very hard to remember all that kind of stuff where you're, grieving and stuff. I think it's like, it must be like 2 years now or something like that, but he was one of my great heroes. He was one of the guys who made me really want to be a creative individual as well, because he wrote a lot of shorts. He wrote a lot of stuff as well. He wrote a lot of creative stories and stuff, which I hope one day to be able to publish in his name and all that kind of stuff. I'd really like to do that kind of thing in his memory. And again, it says in the book, the greatest storyteller I ever knew, and that's just because he was one of the most enthralling storytellers ever. Very stereotypical old man in his chair, leaning, telling you the story. He was just so good at it. Amazing voice, inflection, just the way he told stories. It's great. Yes, he was very good at it. So I wanted to dedicate this book to him. Like I said, 6 stories, 6 poems. The short stories are called The Happy Chemical, Sand is Life, Life is Joy, Destined Exodus in Space, E, Flat Free 1, Fear and the Fluid Monster. Oh baby, I'll pick 3, the 3 that I quite like of those, and break down where the process came, where the idea came from, and all that kind of stuff. And in terms of the poems, the 6 poems are The Construct, Reality and or Unreality, Creator's Candle, The Third Eye Opens, Life Outside the Steel Machine, and The Ambient Quest, bracket, Everyone's in the Midst, bracket. So I guess one story that I'll talk about is the second story in this book, Sand is Life, Life is Joy, probably one of my all-time favourite short stories that I ever wrote. I actually wrote it in college, probably way back in 2017. And it's essentially it's a speculative fiction, dark comedy story. It's set in the far future, not too far away, the year 2067, because I was writing it in 2017. So I guess my thinking was, how far should I set it? I didn't want to make it unbelievably far. I wanted to make it kind of close, but far away enough for, like, God Christ, that's going to be a while away. So 2067, 50-year mark. 50 years is pretty good, I think. 5 decades, a lot can happen in 50 years. And I think the subject, the topic, the theme, the setting of this particular story is the kind of thing that could be believed to have happened in 2067, and that is the classic virtual reality story. Obviously, virtual reality is a thing that's very much here. It's prevalent. It's now. It's happening. It's obviously a thing that's not been completely refined yet. You can't run around all around your house, with this headset on and think you're really somewhere. It's immersive. A lot of people have the headsets and stuff, and there's a lot of great games that put you in that world. But it's definitely not the virtual reality that everyone, I guess, dreamed of. All those years ago, the idea of just running around in worlds without limits and all that kind of stuff, and it feels like you're really there. 2067, you never know, man. I don't know if it's not a reflection of me thinking it could happen. Again, it's speculative fiction, but I thought it was a good year to set that kind of thing, a virtual reality landscape that you feel like you're really in, and you could be there for days at a time, ages and ages. But yeah, like I said, it's set in a virtual reality landscape. It's told via a first person perspective from this one unfortunate holiday goer who has been sent to the Sunbeam Bay simulation, because it's a holiday package. There's all these different kind of simulations you can send yourself to. It's like a world where no one goes on holiday anymore. They just go on virtual reality vacations, like this guy did. And then something happens. The way the story is told is via diary entries. My biggest inspiration for that was Dracula and Frankenstein, written by Bram Stoker and Mary Shelley respectively. One of the main methods of which they tell the stories is via diary entries and letters. So it's people writing to people, diary entries written by themselves, talking about what's going on in that current point in time. And it's a really different, interesting method of story progression, rather than just going chapter by chapter, talking about what's going on from a third person perspective, talking about, you know, a guy's first person perspective where he's guiding you through what's going on and all that kind of stuff, you know, in a way like maybe The Great Gatsby does, where it's written by a narrator who kind of is guiding you through the story. Or maybe, I don't know, something like, what's a third person story from the top of my head? Of Mice and Men, you know, where it's talking about the events of the story and what's going on and stuff like that. Diary entries and letters are really cool, and it's one of my favourite ways to write a story, specifically with this kind of story, because it really, you know, it's a really nice, smooth transition of events that's going on via the diary entries that the holiday goer is leaving for himself while he's trapped in a simulation. Emails are being sent from the employees of the company, trying to get the guy out, sending them to each other, and talk about how to get him out and planning and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. Those two books are my main inspiration for that, and that's kind of what I went with. The main inspiration for the world is actually, like, it was one of the, again, another big light bulb moment where you really have an idea and you really, really like the idea. Again, it was written for college, and I came up with it when I was on holiday. Funnily enough, I went to Florida one year. Well, I went to Florida in 2017, and that was the first time I went to a place called Volcano Bay, which was a kind of water park resort kind of place owned by Universal Studios. It's on their land, and it's a really nice, relaxing, chill ass place. Hence the name. It's got a big ass volcano right in the middle of it. It's kind of landmark, and it's right in the middle of this lovely wave pool, surrounded by tiki heads, loungers everywhere, artificial sand everywhere. You know, Hawaiian ukulele music, Elvis playing in the background. It's a very relaxing, I would want to say paradise, because I can chill out there all day long. And that was already quite good for inspiration and stuff. But the thing that really made the idea come to life was these things called tapu wristbands. You get these wristbands as soon as you walk in, and they're like, you know, kind of basically like log you in for virtual lines and all that kind of stuff, which is like the big thing that Universal are pushing right now in other parks like Disney and stuff. And I don't know what it was, but I was walking around with this wristband on attached to me. Everyone else has got these wristbands on, walking around in this, you know, essentially an artificial beach. And then my mind immediately went to this guy wandering around an endless beach, akin to Dune or something, just sand everywhere as far as I can see and nothing else, endless desert, with one of these weird mandated wristbands on. And throughout that whole time in that resort, that was just all I was thinking about, wandering around the park with this idea in my head. And as soon as I got home, I started cranking out an idea. Sand is life, life is joy. I can't quite remember where the title came from, Sand is life, life is joy. I feel like it may have been from an advertisement I saw on the television while on holiday, because I think it was something as life, life is joy was the thing. And then I went, well, that's a good title. Well, that's kind of a cool little slogan-y thing. I kind of replaced whatever the first word was, and then also put sand in there. It's not really necessarily anything to do with the story itself. I guess it's because one of the big prevalent things in the story is sand, because it's absolutely everywhere. It's like one of the main settings of the whole thing in the virtual reality scape is just sand, desert, sand, desert. And obviously because the idea is it's a beach, you know, it's a holiday destination, it's joyful, it's fun, it's life, man. Life is joy, bro. It's sand everywhere, and it's quite the opposite in this story. Yeah, there was a lot of cool little ideas I had for, like, as you can probably see there, it's all told through log entries, of which he's the holiday goer is logging in his virtual wristband, because you can leave like little diary entries and stuff. The titles I got from like different kind of sci-fi stories and stuff, anthology things like Where Is Everybody? I got that from the first episode of the Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone. The first episode was called Where Is Everybody, which probably is what happens to this guy. Close Encounters, you can probably tell where that comes from. Oh, this is one that's pretty fun. The inspiration for this one is absolutely great. So one of the diary entry, one of the letters or whatever, it's an email that's been sent to Elon Fontaine, who is the CEO, or at the very least, he's the leader of this particular branch of Tapu Consumer Products. He's trying to get this holiday gore out. And he emailed Tapu Consumer Products Technical Assistance Handybot Replier. One of my favourite things. It's a theme that I find myself going to very often. I'm talking about big business, because big business corporations and free enterprise is a theme that I explore very often in speculative fiction and dystopian and all that kind of stuff. Like business owning the world is a very big thing that I like to talk about, because it's essentially a real thing. This very strange phenomena of how business kind of just runs everything almost, and no one really bats an eyelid, even though a lot of people just kind of seem to know that business kind of owns a lot of things, like the power that corporations have, the power of Disney, Microsoft, Apple, all these crazy big ass money, Google, all these big ass money making businesses that do all sorts of crazy practices that if any other kind of company that did not have the influence that these companies had would probably get immediately destroyed in court. These companies just kind of don't, because they have so much influence, they have monopolies, and they can't be touched. They essentially just own everything, and people just kind of seem to know, and no one really seems to bother or care, or just kind of, something's not clicked, I guess. It's a very interesting phenomena. And it's a theme that I find myself exploring a lot in stories. And one of the things I like when I talk about big businesses is I like acronyms, long acronyms. I don't know why. I think it got inspired by Portal, the game series developed by Valve. There's a lot of big ass long, ridiculously long names for devices in the Portal series that I think are one part humorous and one part really great for world building. This big futuristic big business corporation making these crazy devices and mechanics and stuff with very complicated names. The one that I always go to when I think about this is the 1500 megawatt aperture science heavy duty super colliding super button. I think that's so funny, and I think that's great. World, again, big business world building, massive corporations creating all these big long ass titles, and that's what I did with the handybot replier. And also I love acronyms as well, so it becomes known as the TCPTAHP. The only reason why I'm bringing this up, this is probably the last thing I'll talk about for this story, because I think it just shows you where inspiration comes from, and how very weird little things kind of come together to make something good, essentially. So this is an email from this technical assistance handybot replier. It's basically the idea of automatic emails. If you're sending an urgent email to someone or something, and it just comes back with this automatic reply. It's basically what this is. This automatic reply is actually a real email that I got sent to me. It was nothing urgent, but I just loved the way it was written. I thought it was hilarious, and I thought it was really fitting for this. I basically copy pasted the email into the story, and I edited it to include all the to fit with the story, essentially. And it was for, I believe it was Toontown Online, Disney's Toontown. It wasn't Disney's Toontown Online, it was Toontown Rewritten. Long story short, it was a MMO. They got shut down, owned by Disney. They got shut down and got revived by these independent dudes who brought the game back. I believe I was just emailing about how I forgot my password to the game or something like that, and I got the reply. The one line that will basically tell you why I wanted to use it. I just want to let you know that we've gotten your Tapu Consumer Products virtual line ticket. The virtual line ticket is part of the email. And I'm failing it under ticket number 2014110002221. Look at the size of that number. It is ridiculous. And I just loved that I was in a virtual line and that was my ticket number. It's huge ass. Like, I can't even tell you how many digits that is right now. Something about that just tickled me a lot, and I thought it was very fitting for this kind of world I'm trying to make, this kind of dark comedy play. So yeah, I basically copy pasted that email. I'll see if I can find the email. If it's still, I'll probably just have to type up and look for it, and then you'll get to read it. And you can compare it even maybe to the one that I made in the book. I guess one of the poems I'll talk about is Creator's Candle, because I very much remember where the inspiration for Creator's Candle came from. It's basically a poem that explores creativity, the creative process, where ideas come from, and I guess it also kind of goes into things that people do to get into the creative mindset, to get to writing and stuff, little habits that they get into, I suppose, because I'm certainly a guy that gets in that kind of thing, and specifically, as the name implies, is all about a candle, because for a long time this was the inspiration for the poem. Back in my old house when I used to live with my mother and father, oftentimes late at night I always had a candle in my room. Specifically, I had one of those woodwick ones which made a little fire burning, wood crackling sound, which I love a lot. I had one of those. Whenever I would sit down to get into the writer's mindset, I would turn off the light and I would light the candle, and then it always seemed like I just wrote better when I had that kind of scenery around me, that kind of environment, this lit candle. And whenever I tried to write with the candle not on, I would kind of be stuck in a block and not know what to write. And I guess as well, as I'm reading it now, it feels like a kind of weird exploration on like the passion for writing, the drive to write and create worlds and stuff, which is one of my favorite things about writing, is the world creation, because like that is kind of the essence of writing. It comes in all sorts of different, writing is basically part of all sorts of creative processes when it comes to script writing or writing for video games, making the world. It all starts with some words, and that's kind of what I like about it at its core, as it is you're either touching pen to paper or fingers clickety-clacketing on a keyboard. It creates a world, and you're basically like the god of the world. You're kind of like the one who makes everything happen. You're creating these people, this world, everything about it, everything about them, the trials and tribulations they go through, and all that kind of stuff is great. That's one of my favorite things about writing, in essence, is the creation of all this stuff, the creation of the worlds and stuff. And it kind of explores that whole thing, and it kind of goes into the idea of how like once you're writing, something kind of just like your brain kind of just switches off, because like you've got this idea in your head that's been percolating for so long, the words just kind of type themselves, and then you're just kind of like on standby as you're creating all this. That kind of is mentioned in the third and second last lines of the poem. The madman etches as if controlled by literary demons with fire in their eyes. It's like something else inside takes over to write, while you're kind of on standby, just letting your fingers go. And it's kind of like, the passion, the drive to write, the passion to create, and the creation of horrible things. The Creator's Candle. And that's a very simple poem. It's only like 12 lines. Not a particularly strict rhyming scheme. The thing with poems is like, you don't have to be pure strict with yourself in terms of like stanzas and rhyming and all that kind of stuff. There doesn't need to be pure rules, because it's just like kind of rhythmic storytelling in a way. The way I think about it is like you get epic poems and stuff like Dante's Inferno, and it's a very long ass poem, and it's not like it rhymes particularly or anything like that. Poems can be whatever the hell you want them to be, so you should be in that mindset when you're writing it, and that's kind of what I do. If I wanted to rhyme a little bit but not a lot, if I want a lot of stanzas, if I want to just be lines, if there's no lines at all, it's any of that kind of thing. But that one's a very simple one, 12 lines of a slight rhyming scheme. Story number 4, E. Oh boy. Actually, you should check it on this channel. I used to do a series called Claudio. I've been thinking about bringing it back at some point. I don't know, but I used to do a lot of audiobooks, essentially immersive audiobooks, including like music and audio cues to get you into the world of which the story is set in. I basically started doing a rotary basis where I would do a short story written by someone else and a short story written by me. E actually got the short story treatment. If you would like to hear that particular story, you can listen to the audiobook. That's kind of before I started doing a lot of audio cues and stuff, but it's got music and stuff in the background. This one is pretty... this is quite a funny one. in a weird way. This one explores something very specific and very much a very modern phenomena that kind of is reflectant on people of my age bracket, I suppose. Young adults who are exposed to the internet at a very young age and know about memes very much. If you know E, you probably know about the meme E, which is literally just like a deep fried picture of Lord Farquaad from Shrek with Markiplier, the YouTuber's face on him, and it just says the letter E at the bottom. Yes, that's memes. People find that funny. I certainly find it absolutely hilarious, and a lot of my friends, we all found it very hilarious as well. Back in the day, two of my good friends from Soup Group, actually, Sammy and Jeff, lived in a house together, flat, which is also the inspiration for another story in here. And we would very much all go and frequent it very often. There would be a lot of bodies there at all hours of the day and the evening. And we basically get up to stuff, playing a lot of video games and, smoking a lot of weed and stuff like that. And, very much a big hat, when you're around each other like that for a long time, you find a lot of things like E funny. They become a big running joke for quite a while. So much so that they become almost the only joke for a while. So much so that E becomes almost in effect a cult mentality after a while. And that seems to be a lot of, the way with a lot of memes, I find. And one of the most fascinating things I find about them is when a meme pops up and it becomes a cultish thing. Everyone is just reposting it and talking about it and memeing it up and all that kind of stuff. It's certainly a thing that we did. And that's basically where the inspiration for that story came from. I loved E, the meme. I loved the whole mentality that we as a friend group had about the letter E and the meme, and just how we would fucking obsess about it for so long. I really wanted to make some sort of really weird horror story based on the letter E and the idea of this meme and how it just buries into your brain and you can't get it out. Yeah, that's basically just where the whole idea of that. It's a first-person perspective story. And the only other thing, I guess, to mention about that one is the flow of it. I was very much obsessed with the speculative fiction short story I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, written by the late and great Harlan Ellison. I did another audiobook for that one as well if you want to check that out. One of my favourite short stories of all time. It's so grim, it's so dark, it's so horrifying, it's amazing, the world building is great. The way it's described, being in the middle of the earth, in the belly of this massive supercomputer that encapsulates the entire planet, and you're just wandering through it, trying to survive. They've been there for 109 years, basically getting tortured endlessly by this computer. It's absolutely fantastic. And you often find, one of the things I can tell you about as a writer is the flow of the story is often how you would read it, I find. How it's read is how it dictates how it flows. That's a very important thing if you're writing. If you're writing something, you should read it aloud often to yourself. And not just like something like, everyone remembers the day that the E came to Earth. It's been the biggest mystery to ever grace humanity. No, you want to read it like how you want it to flow. Like, everyone remembers the day that the E came to Earth. It's been the biggest mystery to ever grace humanity. I have a very distinct idea of how this story should flow when you read it. And I've pretty much read it the same way every time. And I got inspired by how Harlan Ellison wrote I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, because I've listened to the audiobook read by himself. And the way he reads it is crazy. He speaks so fast, so frantically, so crazily. It just ramps up and up and up as the story goes on, as crazy things are happening. I loved the way that he wrote that story, and I very much wanted to reflect that in the way that E flows. It just gets more and more panicked as it goes on, as he discusses the E and what's going on with it and all that kind of stuff. That's E. Poem number 4, The Third Eye Opens, was a poem that I actually wrote specifically for this anthology. And I guess one of the themes I've not explored, and one of the things I'm just obsessed with in general, is psychedelic exploration. Yes, I do like psychedelic substances and stuff, not because I like to trip my balls off, but because I like the psychoactive nature and the exploration of oneself and self-discovery and all that kind of stuff. Even like without that is a thing that's very important to me. Learning more about yourself and building upon yourself and aspects of yourself that, you know, are faults, are flaws, that are great, that are bad. All these things that just build you up into a better person in general is something that I think is very important that everyone should, you know, it's a very important thing, you know, ever changing, ever moving, is how the world should work, how people should work. And it's a thing that I'm very much passionate about. And psychedelic exploration is a big part of that as well. Yeah, I just love the idea of psychedelic exploration and like how, you know, remember, you know, we're all one in a way, you know, we are the oneness of the world and how we are all connected with each other and all that kind of stuff is just absolutely beautiful to me. And it's basically how it is and how it should be and how everyone should conduct themselves, you know. Then that's the beauty of it all, you know, there is no should or should not. It's just the world is as it is. It is just here and we're just here, but we are one as a result. We're nothing and yet we're everything is the fucking, you know, the crazy thing about it. And that is a thing that I've never really wrote about before, I guess. Psychedelic exploration and the idea of oneness in the mind, how it's all all of this is just, you know, made up societal pillars and norms created by us, and then the idea of the mask coming off and then realizing when you're stripped bare that all of that is just nothing. All of you just exists because you've kind of made it so, you've manifested it, but in essence you're basically just nothing, but in essence we're also everything with each other, and all that kind of stuff is a beautiful thing indeed. And I guess a topic and a theme I've never explored before, and another thing that goes into the whole idea of humanity and the universe and oneness and love and all that kind of stuff is kind of a big part of this poem. And each stanza is, I kind of wanted to bookend each of them with like I said before, we are nothing and yet at the same time we are everything. I really like that whole weird dichotomy, you know, strip us down bare from all our societal structures and the ego and all that kind of stuff, and you're basically just nothing at all. But then at the same time as the oneness is the whole of the universe, and we are the universe, we're made up of all that kind of stuff. We are basically everything as a result, you know, which is mind-bogglingly crazy dichotomy, of which I love that whole thing very much. And I wanted to kind of do that via bookend, and like the first stanza starts with I am nothing, and then it ends with we are everything. But yeah, that basically just came from the themes of psychedelic exploration and tripping balls and realizing one is none and yet none is one. Third eye opens. Finally, for the stories, story number 5, Flat 3-1, which is one that I talked about already. I mentioned it briefly while I was talking about E, and this is another audiobook of which I've done. This is one that I wrote again all the way back in 2017, which is the same time at which I wrote E. I was writing a lot in 2017 because I was with my college days and I was with a lot of my friends who I met in college and we're all writing and stuff. This again kind of follows the theme that comes from the House of E, the idea of this cursed house that we all lived in, which I really liked. But yeah, that was just the inspiration for the title basically. Well, that's where the title came from, because the flat that we were living in was 3-1, the first door on the third floor, which I thought was a great name. I was very much obsessed with H.P. Lovecraft at the time. I very much loved the idea of cosmic horror, indescribable anomaly, cosmic beings that we could never possibly comprehend. They just exist, and there's really nothing we can do about it, and we're very small, minuscule as a result. And I love the way Lovecraft tells the story, where it's, you know, a single guy who's a very innocent man just trying to learn some stuff. Then he learns a little bit too much, and he becomes incredibly obsessed with what he's trying to learn, and he basically digs for knowledge that he really should not be knowing, and then is inevitably driven absolutely insane as a result. And I really wanted to do some sort of cosmic horror Lovecraftian tale, which is where and Flat 3-1 was the tale in which it happened. It's the longest story in it's the longest short story in this whole collection as well. It was one that I worked on for quite a while. It basically all started with a joke The whole idea started with a joke, which is where a lot of my ideas come from. It's like, what if this? It could be a joke or just a throw off, and then if I really think about it, I go, oh, I really like that idea, and then I write. I've got a big pile of notes, which I have to show just a bunch of ideas and stuff that I've been keeping for the past like 5 years pretty much. And I think the idea basically started with what if like I was joking about the flat, and I was like, this flat, it's like, imagine like going up the stairs, and then the stairs just go on forever and ever. You're trying to get to the flat, and then it's a never-ending staircase. I think that came from Super Mario 64, the endless staircase, which is like the final boss fight. If you don't get enough stars, you can't get up, and it's just endless stairs. Kind of came from that whole thing, and you're just going up, up the stairs, up the flights and stuff, and it's just never ending. And then I think it ended with like, imagine opening the door and it was just like a living, heaving thing. I'm not going to get too much into that, but basically those two things and the whole idea of the flat, the cursed house, is what put, and my desire to make a Lovecraftian horror, cosmic horror, is what gave birth to Flat 3-1. It also is set in Scotland. It's one of the only stories of which I've actually written in my homeland, basically. Primarily because I wanted to get it as close to the origin house, the flat that inspired the whole story as possible. So that's Flat 3-1. And I suppose the final poem that we can talk about is the last poem in the book, and the last bit of writing before the book finishes. The Ambient Quest, bracket, everyone's in the midst, bracket. This is another poem that manifested to fill in the gaps of the anthology. And one thing that I've been wanting to write for a long time, I'm a very big fan of R&B and rap and all that kind of stuff. I never thought I would be, but I got into it through my friends and stuff, introduced me a lot of great artists that I eventually kind of really started to like Kendrick Lamar, specifically MF Doom. MF Doom is probably just one of my favourite artists of all time, one of my favourite musicians, and his rapping flow and style is just absolutely like bonkers. God rest that man, the late and great MF Doom. His rhyming scheme and his flow, and like specifically, like not to mention like his beats are absolutely fantastic, rhythmic, and they go off of they coincide with the flow of the words and stuff very well. But specifically talking about his rhyme scheme right now, and how he rhymes as well, because he doesn't really sing, he just kind of speaks and spits the words. It got me thinking that basically like rap is poetry in a weird way. It's more like rhythmic, musical slam poetry basically, with much more rhyming schemes and rhythmic speaking and stuff, as opposed to like reading, I guess, stanzas and stuff. If that makes any sense. And I think that I really wanted to experiment with that I've never really done before is rap poetry. Not necessarily writing a rap, but a poem that's kind of written to a beat, like a flow, to make that kind of rhyming, rapping flow, and then it's read in that kind of spitting style in a way almost, but it's like read as a poem. Very much was inspired by MF Doom's flow and all that kind of stuff. And it's the longest poem in the book as well. Like I said, it was written to, it's supposed to be read to almost to a beat, almost, and I wrote it to a beat. And again, it's so inspired by MF Doom and his writing scheme and his flow. But the Ambient Quest is kind of more like the brutal side of love, I suppose. Relationships that don't go well, that don't work out, but they seem like they were going to very much, and the way that those people make you feel, and how that whole feeling is gone, and you're expected not to feel that way about them after it's all finished and all that kind of stuff. It was very much written after those kind of wounds were healed, in my perspective anyway, after a couple of relationships like that. But then it also had that positive note of, because at that point I was just starting to date my current girlfriend, who I love very much, and like I live with her and all that kind of stuff, and it's all great. I'm very, very happy with her, and she means the world to me and all that kind of stuff. And that kind of feeling of like, you gotta take, that's what love is. You take your licks, and then you gotta get up and keep looking for the one, basically. Or not, like the one doesn't exist. Look for the one that you can be with and be happy with and keep being happy with and work with. And then get to that point where the love is like, a cooperative not like romanticized thing, but just you're happy with each other and you can live with each other and make it work, I suppose is what the Ambient Quest explores. And the reason why it's called the Ambient Quest, I got the idea off of, because the whole idea of finding love and settling down and stuff is like an ambient quest, which is like a game terminology for a recurring quest you can like get from a character, where you go out and do something and then you succeed and then you have to do it again, basically, as an ambient quest. And that's kind of what love is as explored in this poem, where you find love with someone, you've completed your quest, and then it all ends, and then you have to go out and do the quest again until you succeed, and then you have to do it again until you settle, and it basically all finishes. That's the ambient quest that everyone's in the midst of doing, basically. And I suppose that's it. Like I said, I'm just going to give you 3 of each kind of thing, because there's like 6 of each, so I'm not going to dive too far into it, but I just wanted to give you a little taste of the creative process, the behind the scenes, where my mind was while I was writing Places to Be in the Mindscape. I hope you enjoyed this little dissection into the writing process, where ideas come from in that way, and poetry and writing and all the different genres and all that kind of stuff. It's a bit of a unique one compared to like talking about video production, I suppose, because writing is just a thing that I like very much. And I wanted to talk about this because I was thinking about it. I've got a copy. This is my girlfriend's copy. And I thought, well, why not talk about it? Why not talk about the making of the book? So yes, that is it. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Behind the Process. Again, if you'd like to support me, support the channel or whatever, these are available on Amazon, $1.99 ebook, $4.99 paperback, wherever you please. That's all fine. Yeah, I guess all other things I can say is keep tuned into the channel. Streams will be coming back soon. Watch that stream that I did, the Moving In stream, that's on the YouTube channel right now to get brushed up on what's going on right now and all that kind of stuff. And yes, I suppose I will return for another installation of this at some point, and more content to come, fellas. I have been Coleman. Bye-bye.